Did you know that Africa's tech ecosystem raised over $5.2 billion in 2021 alone? It's mind blowing how the continent is rapidly becoming a key player in the global digital economy.
Wow, that's an impressive figure. What's driving this surge in investment?
Well, it's a combination of factors. You've got these incredible tech hubs popping up all over the continent, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. Take Lagos, Nigeria, for example. They've got this amazing space called Co Creation Hub, or CC Hub, that was actually Nigeria's first open living lab.
Hmm. What exactly does an open living lab entail?
So it's like this perfect storm of innovation, mentorship, and funding all under one roof. Seek Hub provides a collaborative space where entrepreneurs can work on their ideas, get guidance from industry experts, and even access seed funding. And get this, well, startups under Seek Hub have collectively raised over $60 million. dollars.
That's a significant amount. What kind of startups are we talking about here?
Oh, they're backing some really impactful companies. There's LifeBank, which is literally saving lives by connecting hospitals with crucial medical supplies, especially blood. And then you've got Budget, which is making public finance data accessible to regular citizens. It's not just about creating cool tech, these startups are addressing real, pressing issues in Africa.
It's fascinating to see how technology is being used to solve local problems. Are there similar hubs in other African countries?
Absolutely. In fact, this tech revolution is happening all across the continent. Have you heard about what's going on in Kenya? They're calling Nairobi the Silicon Savannah now.
Silicon Savannah? That's quite a nickname. What's driving that comparison?
Well, Nairobi has multiple major tech hubs, but iHub is probably the most well known. Since 2010, they've built this community of over 16,000 innovators and attracted partnerships with tech giants like Google, Microsoft, and Intel. Their startups have raised over $40 million dollars collectively.
That's impressive. Can you give me an example of a successful startup that's come out of iHub?
Sure thing. One of the most interesting is BRCK. They're creating rugged internet connectivity devices specifically designed for underserved regions in Africa. And of course, there's M-Pesa, which has completely revolutionized mobile payments for people who don't have access to traditional banking.
So it sounds like these hubs are really focusing on solutions tailored to African needs. Are we seeing similar trends in other parts of the continent?
Absolutely. What's really cool is how these hubs are spread across Africa, each with its own unique focus. In South Africa, you've got the Innovation Hub in Pretoria, which was actually the country's first internationally accredited science and technology park.
Oh, interesting. How does South Africa's tech scene compare to places like Nigeria and Kenya?
Well, it's actually one of the leading countries in startup funding. Remember that $5.2 billion figure I mentioned earlier for African tech startups in 2021? South Africa was a major player in that. But what's really fascinating is how each region has its own specialty.
What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example?
Sure thing. Take Ghana, for instance. They've got MEST Africa in Accra, which is not just a tech hub, it's also a training program and seed fund. They've launched over 80 tech companies and provide seed funding anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 for early stage companies.
That's a significant amount of seed funding. Are these companies actually succeeding?
Many of them are. Companies like Mekaza are revolutionizing real estate services, and there's this really innovative company called Trotro Tractor. People call it the Uber for tractors. That's helping farmers access agricultural machinery. It's taking a modern solution and applying it to a traditional sector.
That's brilliant. It really shows how these hubs are fostering innovation that's relevant to local needs. What about some of the smaller countries? Are they getting in on this tech revolution?
You bet they are. Take Zambia, for instance. They've got Bongo Hive in Lusaka, which was the country's first tech hub. In 2020, Zambian startups received nearly $4 million in funding, which might sound small compared to Nigeria or Kenya, but it's significant for their market.
And what about Ethiopia? I've heard their tech scene is growing rapidly.
You're right on the money there. They've got Ice Addis in Addis Ababa, which was Ethiopia's first innovation hub. They're doing some really interesting work with companies like Payway Ethiopia, which is working on financial inclusion through payment kiosks and mobile point of service agents.
It sounds like there's a strong focus on financial technology across these hubs.
That's definitely a major focus, but what's really impressive is the diversity of solutions they're creating. These hubs are tackling everything from healthcare and education to agriculture and environmental sustainability. It's not just about creating cool apps, it's about using technology to address real world challenges.
That's fascinating. How easy is it for startups to join these hubs?
It's actually pretty straightforward. Most hubs have simple online registration and application procedures. They typically offer flexible office space and co working arrangements, making it accessible for entrepreneurs at different stages of their journey.
And what about international investment? Are these hubs attracting global attention?
Oh, absolutely. There's been a huge increase in global investor interest. Cities like Nairobi, Lagos, and Cape Town are becoming major attractions for international companies and investors. Plus, many of these hubs are getting backing from organizations like the World Bank and the United Nations.
It really seems like Africa is positioning itself as a major player in the global tech scene.
Without a doubt. And what's really exciting is that this is just the beginning. With the regulatory environment improving and startup capital expanding, we're likely to see even more innovation coming out of Africa in the coming years.
So it's not just about technology, is it? These hubs are really driving economic development and creating opportunities for young people across the continent.
Exactly. They're creating jobs, solving local problems, and building sustainable businesses. It's really a perfect example of how technology can be a force for positive change when it's focused on addressing real needs and challenges.
Can you give me an example of how these tech hubs are impacting local communities?
Sure thing. Let's look at Hive Collab in Kampala, Uganda. They've supported startups like Western Silk Road Ltd, which is enhancing rural household incomes through sustainable beekeeping practices. This isn't just about creating a successful business, it's about improving livelihoods in rural communities.
That's really impressive. It seems like these hubs are fostering a new generation of socially conscious entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to one or two countries. Take Rwanda, for example. They've got Impact Hub in Kigali, which is part of a global network of entrepreneurial communities. They're running programs like Lafia Innovators, which support startups addressing health challenges in emerging economies.
It's amazing to see how these hubs are tackling such a wide range of issues. Are there any particular sectors that seem to be getting more attention?
Well, fintech is definitely a big one. We're seeing a lot of innovation in mobile payments and financial inclusion, but there's also a growing focus on agri-tech, health tech, and ed tech. These are all areas where technology can have a huge impact on people's daily lives.
That makes sense. These are all sectors that are crucial for development. How are these hubs helping startups scale beyond their local markets?
That's a great question. Many of these hubs have international partnerships that help startups expand their reach. For instance, Mest Africa has connections with global accelerators like Techstars and Y Combinator. This gives African startups exposure to international markets and investors.
Interesting. Are we seeing any success stories of African startups going global?
Oh, absolutely. Take M-Pesa, for example. It started in Kenya, but now it's used in several countries across Africa and even in parts of Asia. And then there's Andela, which trains software developers in Africa and connects them with global tech companies. They've raised over $180 million in funding.
Wow, that's impressive. It really challenges the traditional narratives about technology and innovation being centered in places like Silicon Valley or Shanghai.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this story so powerful. It's about Africa creating its own unique tech ecosystem, one that's built on solving local challenges but with global potential. The future of tech isn't just in Silicon Valley, but it's in the silicon savannas of Africa too.
So, what do you think the future holds for Africa's tech scene?
Well, if current trends continue, we're likely to see even more investment flowing into African tech. The African Development Bank predicts that Africa's GDP could reach $29 trillion by 2050. That's larger than the combined GDPs of the US and Eurozone in 2012. Technology will play a huge role in driving this growth.
That's an incredible projection. Are there any challenges that could hinder this growth?
Oh, for sure. Infrastructure remains a big challenge in many parts of Africa. Reliable electricity and internet connectivity are still issues in some areas. There's also the need for more supportive policies and regulations to help startups thrive. But the exciting thing is that many of these tech hubs are actively working to address these challenges.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential, but also a lot of work to be done. What should we be watching for in the coming years?
I'd say keep an eye on how these tech hubs evolve. We might see more specialization with hubs focusing on specific sectors like fintech or agritech. Also, watch for more Pan African collaboration. As these hubs grow, we're likely to see more partnerships across countries, which could lead to some really exciting innovations.
This has been fascinating. It really gives you hope about the future of technology and innovation in Africa, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think we're going to see even more amazing innovations coming out of these tech hubs in the years to come. The foundation has been laid and the momentum is definitely building. Africa's tech revolution is just getting started and it's going to be exciting to watch it unfold.
Well, thank you for this insightful discussion. It's clear that Africa's tech ecosystem is not just growing, but thriving and innovating in ways that could have global impact.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I think the key takeaway is this: Africa's tech hubs are not just incubators for startups, they're catalysts for economic growth, social change, and technological innovation. They're proving that with the right support and infrastructure, innovation can thrive anywhere. The next big tech breakthrough might just come from a small startup in Lagos, Nairobi, or Accra.
Hmm. And it's a reminder that innovation often comes from solving real, pressing problems. These African startups aren't just creating technology for technology's sake, they're addressing critical issues in healthcare, finance, agriculture, and more.
Exactly. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about creating the next big app or gadget, it's about using technology to improve lives and drive development. As we look to the future, I think we'll see Africa increasingly taking center stage in the global tech narrative. It's an exciting time, and I can't wait to see what comes next.